Yo, if this is your first time here, welcome. If you've been here before, welcome back. My name's Steven, and finally, I'm here to take a look at the Steam Deck. I'm here to tell you whether I think it's worth us average Joes saving up our hard-earned cash to pay for one. I don't make a lot of money, and I certainly don't make a lot from YouTube, so investing in something like this was a huge big step for me, and I felt like I owed it to use for somebody who's not shilling it, who's not getting paid to review it or anything like that, not getting it for free, to give a rundown on it and say whether I think it's worth you saving up your money and spending on it. Saving up all that cash to spend on something like this is a big moment, right? If you saved up 500, 600 quid to spend on a handheld device, that can be quite a lot of money, and it is for me, so therefore I feel like I want to tell you all the things about it, what you get with it, and whether it is worth paying for. Anyone outside of the world that we're in may just think that this is just a glorified Game Boy, however it is so much more than that, and that's what I'll be going over. Now, I've had a lot of time to play with this, and I thought this would be the perfect time for me to come on and give an unbiased view on the thing, given that I'm not shilling it, I'm not trying to sell it to you, I don't have a discount code for you, I don't have any of that stuff, I'm just giving you my view of what I think on it. This is the perfect time because you can now buy them from the Valve website directly. Before you had to wait a couple of weeks pre-order, they were doing them in big batches, but now you can actually just order them straight away, and Valve are saying they're shipping them within 2 weeks, which is fantastic now. I was one of the ones that had these on pre-order originally when they weren't available, so I have had this for quite a long time now, but like I say, you can pick them up pretty quickly now. I didn't want to put a review up then when they weren't readily available. It just felt a little bit shit saying look at this amazing piece of kit, but you can't get one unless you wait X amount of weeks. So now you can get one straight away. I feel a bit better doing this. It just meant that I got quite a bit longer time to play with it and to give a better review on the thing anyway. Now I know it's a chore, seems like a bit of a faff, but if you do enjoy my content and would like to support a tiny little creator for free, click that subscribe button, it would mean a lot to me. Anyway, I won't waste any more of your time, let's get into it. I'm gonna guess by now you've seen the Steam Deck, and that's probably why you're here. Maybe you're thinking of getting one, maybe you already have one, maybe you've ordered one, you're wondering if you've made the right investment. The bulk of my reviews and content is like controllers and stuff. This is kinda a controller, I suppose. I've looked at a lot of gaming tech, so I suppose it puts me in an alright place to be able to give you a decent review. Anyway, irrespective of what goes on the channel, I'm well versed enough to give you an unbiased view on whether I think it's worth it or not. All the reviews I've looked at were people that were either sponsored by Valve, shelled through the teeth, been asked to give a review on them and all that kind of stuff, whereas I thought it was worth it just to give something from somebody who saved up for a while for it, and yeah, I don't have anything to gain or a kickback for you going and buying one, so yeah, here you go. Right, cards on the table right for the start. The Valve Steam Deck is essentially the best handheld ever made. Ever. It's absolutely pointless to compare it to a Nintendo Switch or a PS Vita. It's in its own league altogether. It doesn't even come close to those two. Those other two are so far away from this that it would even be fair to compare them to this type of handheld. So this is arguably the best handheld that has ever been made in general. The most powerful, the best, all over. It's mind-boggling to just take yourself back a few years when you're looking at things like the PS Vita and think that you'd be playing full Steam games at 30, 60 FPS on a handheld thing. That is wild. Mind-boggling. That being said, you still can't play every game in your Steam library, so maybe there is still a ways to go with the thing with firmware updates, but that may happen over time. Despite not being able to play some games, this thing does more than enough across the board to justify you getting it. And I mean, the only thing, the battery life, well, we'll get to that anyway, but depending on your expectations, is not absolutely fantastic. But even as it stands with no changes, as it stands at the moment as a piece of kit, this thing is an absolute masterpiece, in my humble opinion. So the first thing we're going to talk about is price and availability. As I said before, you can now order these straight from the Valve website, and it says that they have a 2-week turnaround to get delivered to you. If that is true, I can now call it a readily available device, should you have the money sitting around to buy one. It certainly hasn't been a readily available device for the last little while, given all the pre-order stuff and what they did with it, which was quite cool. It made their need for it. What's the word? Something, demand, need, want, demand, whatever. So the Valve Steam Deck has 3 different options. These are basically exactly the same, apart from the memory that they have, and the most expensive one comes with some anti-glare glass screen on it, and that's about it. It starts at $399 or 360 quid, give or take some changes in the currency exchange rate. For the 64GB one, I've got the 256GB one, which was 460 quid or $530. Then there's the 512GB version, which comes with the extra display thingy for $649 or a lot of pounds. All versions come with a Van Gogh APU. An APU is basically a CPU and a GPU rolled into one to be a space saver for a small handheld device like this one, as you couldn't fit massive big 4090 into something like this or a full chip or any of that kind of stuff. So yeah, APU is them rolled into one. And they all have 16GB of RAM. They all come with this black case that has the Steam Deck logo on the top, which is actually a really nice case. It is a nice case overall. Reminds me of the DJI cases for the drones. Irrelevant, but yeah, that's what it does. So an overview in general. This is one of, if not the largest handheld ever released. She is thick. It's 11.73 by 4.6 by 1.93 inches. For some perspective, look at this next to my head. This is my size 12 croc. wild. It weighs in at almost 0.7 of a kilo or 1.5 pounds, but actually with some sort of physics-defying technology, Valve have managed to make it feel, well, not that heavy. There's absolutely no doubt that the build quality on this makes it feel and look ridiculously premium, which you should hope given the price that you're paying for this thing. I'm very happy that it comes this way, with its thick flat center and contoured hand grips. There's an analog stick and a trackpad on each side, along with a D-pad on the left and the X, Y, A and B buttons on the right. The view and menu buttons work as select and pause in game, and the Steam and quick access buttons let you access the SteamOS. Up top between the shoulder buttons we've got volume buttons, a 3.5mm headphone jack, USB-C port and a power button. There are also 4 fully programmable back buttons on the back that act kind of like paddles on a controller, and a mini SD card reader on the bottom. There's also a speaker on the bottom of each side and some nice hefty air vents up top. The design isn't a ridiculous far cry from other handhelds that have been seen in the past. It is, as I said before, just a lot bigger. It does have a unique look to it while keeping all the standard features you would expect from a handheld like this. Overall, it just looks nice, doesn't it? The weight distribution across it actually makes it really nice to play with for extended periods of time. It doesn't hurt your hands, it doesn't get ridiculous, it's not heavy, you don't have to lean it against something or put it in anything at all. It is a lovely little bit of kit to play on if you opt against playing with a controller, which I assume most of you will. I prefer to play with a controller, as you see my whole channel is addicted to controllers, but if this is what you choose to play with and you want to play with the controls on this, it is very, very nice to play with. Giggity. The screen. So it's got a sharp 7-inch LCD touchscreen. The massive bezels around it do take up quite a lot of room on the screen though. Only other thing I've been reading, a lot of people have some issues with reading the small text in a lot of games. It's not been an issue for me, and most games do have the ability to be able to increase the text size. Maybe it's just the games that I play, but I've never really had an issue with it. Every game you play on this does look amazing on the 1280x720 screen at a 16:10 aspect ratio. Loads of current games do actually have a 16:9 ratio though, which means that you may lose a teensy weensy bit at the top and bottom of the game depending on what you're playing, but it's definitely not enough to be noticeable anywhere at all. You will not notice, promise. It's rated at 400 nits brightness in the tech specs, but I'm not too sure about that to be honest. If you're indoors, it's totally sound. I was sitting on the train playing it, the sun was beaming in the window and I was finding it really hard to play Elden Ring on, which makes me think I'm not sure how viable it would be outside. I can't speak to how well the most expensive model with the anti-glare screen works better than that, but this one is probably not going to work too much outside. Doesn't make a difference to me. I live in Scotland where I can't go outside for more than one day of the year, so I'll always be inside. However, it might matter to you, so it's something maybe worth thinking about. Performance. So this can run most compatible games at around 30 frames per second on high settings, for the most part. Obviously it can't compete with some of the gaming laptops or gaming PCs, but it's enough to play many decent games at decent frame rates, especially if they're optimized for SteamOS. There are loads of benchmark tests all over YouTube and Google if you want to look for specific tech specs. I'm not that guy. I just run a game and look at what the frames run like and talk about how it plays. So that's what I've done for you today. I've just went over my experiences with a few of the games so that you can see how they ran and what they topped out at, etc. I don't have any of the normal testing gear or the trinkets to boost FPS or any of that. I'm just a normal person that just plays the game and looks at what the frames say. So Elden Ring on medium settings for me pulled a consistent 40 frames, and high settings pulled another relatively consistent 30 frames. Any higher quality and the drops were kind of noticeable. Although what I will say is for me, on the tiny screen at the smaller resolutions, I didn't notice a difference because it makes it look amazing. Maybe that's just for me, but if you're putting it to a big screen, you might notice a difference. But yeah, if you're playing it on the small screen, the lower quality is kind of subsidized by the size of the screen. I could be making that up, but it just looks just as good on the small screen. Doom Eternal is one that has the Steam Deck optimized mode, which optimizes the game for handheld. This wildly ran at 60 frames across all quality settings, which was, I don't know what type of wizardry goes on there to make that happen. But I mean, we know that it's an extremely well optimized game in the first place, so maybe that helps. What this does do is this gives me massive hope for all the games in the future, that if they can be optimized that well, that this opens the floodgates to all the games running that well. Getting games up to 120 frames, who knows? The last one was Valheim, and this on medium settings pulled a consistent 60 frames across the board, and it looks pretty good, but the text was sometimes a bit hard to read. That was the only one for me where I had a small issue with the text, because it was just kind of funky. But I thought sometimes it was hard to read the text on Valheim on a big monitor anyway, so it's what it is. And high settings was around 40 frames, which is nothing to be sniffed at either. Gameplay. So everything I've said there before on the performance stuff, the gameplay, irrespective of what all that says, is unbelievable. It's class. It's so nice to play on. Everything's smooth as butter. Even no matter what the frames are doing, it just feels class. And it's so weird to play these types of games on such a small screen and handheld. It's just crazy. Modern titles just play exactly as you would expect them to, and it's just a whole new gaming experience for you to play on. It's just good not being buckled into a desk or to a big monitor or any of that kind of stuff. Just being able to sit on a couch, sit in bed, do whatever you want to do and play that way. However, what I am going to say is I'm going to guess that you will do, if you've bought one or have done if you already have one, the same thing I did, which is buy an ultra high spec current gaming handheld console to play 20-year-old games on. If that is the case, you're in luck. There's a ton of emulators that work amazingly well, so if you want a top spec Game Boy, GameCube, DS, this will fit it fantastically. Retro game fans will love playing old games on this, guaranteed. The software. SteamOS 3.0 functions just as well as it does on a desktop. This uses a modified version of the Steam desktop client rather than making its own one for handheld, so it's class, it works very, very well. If you've used Steam in any capacity before, you'll be absolutely sound here. Easy to navigate through, smooth as butter. The controls, what can I say about this? It has nice responsive and clicky buttons, has very, very smart button placement. Wherever you want to touch the buttons, they're bang on. You can configure every button on the thing within it to make it do whatever you want. The touch control responsiveness on the screen isn't too great, that could be worked on. The back buttons, I'm not too impressed by the back buttons. I'm hoping there's something to fix this, an attachment or something, but they take a lot of pressing. They're very hard to press, which is good if you don't want to press them by accident, but they do take a ton of pressing, so they're not very quick. But comfort-wise, it's an absolute joy to play on for long periods of time, with the button placement, how hard the buttons are to press, all that kind of stuff. It's an absolute joy to play on. The controller grips either side of it feel amazing to hold as well. They're no too thick, no too thin, no too flimsy, no too bulky. The analog sticks are pretty loose and they're easy to reach with both your thumbs. The shoulder buttons give good resistance to play with, and they give a nice little click when you press them. The controls on this, to be honest, are just as good as any normal modern controller through USB, or you can go through Bluetooth. Whatever you choose to do, I like to play on a controller. That's just how I am because I have 15 controllers that I can choose from anyway. But if you do choose to use the controller to play on, it's fantastic. The game library. So there's more than 2,000 verified games that I will leave a link to below that you can see the full list of games if you want to go look on that are actually verified on the Steam Deck. These include games like Elden Ring, Spider-Man Remastered, so on and so forth. There's currently 4 compatibility categories that exist for all games that Steam have pigeonholed them into, Valve have pigeonholed them into. One is verified titles, which will play as you would expect. Then you've got playable titles, which may require some community controller inputs or may require some assistance in the back end or you to install some software to help you play. Unsupported titles, which is basically most VR games, and there's a few other ones just now that don't work as well. And then a catch-all of unknown, which is might be alright, might not. A lot of your indie titles will fall into here. They're just a case of you try them and they may work and they may not. Like I say, I'll link a full list of the compatible games in the description below if you want to go look at that. But I'd say that it's important to remember that as this is out for longer, there's some very smart folks in the background in forums and all that kind of stuff that are coming up with ways to play these games in every way, shape and form. So if you give it a bit of time, I'm sure any of your favourite titles will be soon available to play in some capacity. Last one, battery life and heat. Since the Steam Deck is capable of running ridiculously graphically intensive games, like Elden Ring for example, Dark Souls, all that kind of stuff, it's no surprise that it can run pretty hot. Tests revealed that the underside near the vents reached nearly 109 degrees Fahrenheit and the entire underside gets as hot as 90 degrees. The screen also 90 degrees. Thankfully it never gets too warm because your hands are so far away that you will never notice the actual warmth, but in the middle it's very, very warm. Just on the outsides when you're playing you don't notice it. However, if you're setting it on your lap or that, you will notice it because it is fucking warm. As far as battery life, for me in all cases it lasts around about 4 hours no matter what I'm playing. Sometimes it'll be a little bit longer if it's something that's less graphically intense, or it'll be a little bit less if it's something that is a bit more so. So there's not a massive swing, somewhere about 4 hours. I would have liked to see this quite a bit longer. Maybe there will be battery extensions. You can plug it in while you're playing. That's why they put the thing at the top so you can plug in at the same time, which I feel was a nice touch. So yeah, you can play it while it's charging at the same time. Oh, all that was a lot of rambling. I basically told you all about it with some of my views in between, but here's my verdict. Should you get one? Yes, 100%. If you have the cash, go for it. If you don't have the cash, save up and buy one if handhelds are your thing and you want something a little bit different out the box to play with. So if you're a Steam user who wants to take their games on the road, or if you're someone who wants a beefier handheld than the Switch capable of much, 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 much more, then you can't go wrong with this. If you did enjoy this video, don't forget to click that sub button below, click like, leave a comment, do what you need to do, tell me what you think of the Steam Deck. If you've got one, ordered one, thinking about getting one, any questions, just let me know. And thanks so much for watching. I will see you in the next one.